A lot of it was based on this premise that I was smarter, that I didn't need God. I could navigate life on my own. I'm Todd Robinson, and this is my story. When I was in about grade 3 or grade 4, I remember my mom and dad making a significant life decision to follow Christ. From that moment on, all that our life changed a lot. One of the things I remember most vividly is the change in my dad's behavior. Dad became a real example of what it is to be a man of God. He modeled for us as kids what it meant to follow through on your commitment and grow in your relationship with Christ. So all through my childhood years, I grew up in the church. But as I reflect back, one of the things that was probably the biggest struggle for me was wanting to fit in, wanting to belong. Growing up in a small community with very few kids in my class or my age group, being a Christian was not the most popular thing. That need for popularity is something that I think haunted me throughout my childhood years. It was about 1987 when I was my second year at university. I remember vividly a time when I was making a decision about what I wanted to do with the rest of my life, and I made a decision at that point in time that I was going to try to do some things on my own that I just couldn't figure out if I was following Christ and doing all the things I needed to do because it was the right thing to do, and I felt like I needed to see what was out there and experience life in order to make that decision. I recall going home to my mom and dad's on one weekend from my university and having a conversation on a Sunday afternoon with my dad and mom and telling them that I was going to make this decision to go out and try to live my life for myself and see what was out there. And I remember having a very heated debate with my dad. He told me clearly, "Todd, you can't do this." And I guess at that point, I said to my dad, "Dad, we can't do this because if we fight about this, it might ruin our relationship." At that time, he agreed reluctantly, to let me go my own way and live my own life. So for many years, actually, I wasn't involved with the church. I wasn't connected with Christ. When I made the decision to move away from Christ and to live my life on my own, I think a lot of it was based on this premise that I was smarter, that there was something better, that I didn't need God, that I could navigate life on my own. And the one thing that kept happening to me during that period of time is that God gently reminded me that I maybe wasn't as smart as I thought I was. He always had in mind for me what was best. And as I sought out all these other truths, and as I sought out these other, what the world were saying were popular lifestyles, I kept coming up with these hollow responses. It was, wow, this wasn't what I thought it was going to be, And I believe that's just part of my story, part of my journey, and it wasn't because of lack of understanding or lack of commitment on the part of my parents, but it was just that my whole life I've always wanted to be, popularity was a piece for me that I struggled with, and control, as I reflect back, was probably even more so what I wanted or what I was striving for. I continued to live life as best I thought I could, making decisions that I thought were good decisions. I'm thankful to this day that God was still there. He was never that far away from me. It was during those years that I met my wife. It was during those years that I started a career that to this day I love. All through looking back, God's blessing. If I fast forward a bit to 1999, my mom and dad had invited us to go to a family camp at Moose Lake. But this particular camp, the speaker was a fellow by the name of Al Lowry. Al was a fellow who, when I first went to university, got me plugged into the Navigators program. He was very aware that I had went my own way and wasn't living a life that God would have wanted for me, for sure. Al was the main speaker, and him and I spent a lot of time in the evening talking, and And I still remember the analogy he was using when he was talking about being in the driver's seat and how much that we all wanted to be drivers and how we were reluctant to let God be the driver in our life. And I was under a pile of pressure. I recall sitting with Al one night and just saying, I can't take this anymore. I'm trying hard and I can't do it myself. And him telling me again, just reassuring me, there's one way to figure this out, and that's to trust God. He's going to take this circumstance and he's going to use it for his plan, and I needed to be more trusting, and I needed to step away from the driver's seat, let go of the steering wheel, and let him take control. That night in 1999, I made that decision to recommit my life. It's humbling that God pursued me for 12 years. A loving God pursued me and never let me go. I remember driving home the next day with my family, and I had 2 young girls at the time, and they were just babies. And I remember saying to my wife, who didn't grow up in a Christian home per se, that I had recommitted my life and I wanted to make this change in my lifestyle and get back involved with the church and committed, and I hoped that she would do it with me. And I recall her just looking across at me as we were driving and saying, "I didn't know what took you so long." And she had made a decision in her own life, in conjunction with some support from my mom, to give her life to Christ. And she was waiting for me to be the dad, to be the father of the house, and to lead a Christian family. The most important job I have right now is to be a father. I'm trying to be a role model for three young women who are trying to figure out for themselves. And I think, like my dad, I want to tell them what they need to do and have to do because I know what's right, or I think I know what's right. But learning to trust God through all of this, that, they'll come to know the loving power of Jesus and grow in a relationship with Him that will be life-changing for them. And that's my biggest prayer, is that they will find Him